Welcome to BlackUSA.news morning show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real. Greetings and salutations, all my people out there in internet land. I am William Honolulu Jr., and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the host of the Black USA News Morning Show. Welcome to the Black USA News Morning Show. I am really glad to have you all here today. As is always, we give big shout outs to the people that make this possible. So big shout out to the super producer and the assistant producer, Kyle Crazy Horse Morgan and Brandy Raymar, for all they do behind the scenes to help us get a quality show that you all deserve. We also want to thank Donnie Glover and the I Am Black Wall Street book. Donnie has been one of our sponsors. Let me make sure y'all can see what his book look like. There it is. The I Am Black Wall Street book. We're grateful for Donnie for all that he does and all that he assists the people in the community with, and honestly, us too. So big up to him. Want you all to know that Black USA News is also hosting a grant writing workshop where we teach you how to write grants under $50,000. The link to the event is in the description. The cost is $25 general admission, but you can also win free tickets to attend the event. So make sure you go into the description and click the link, or visit us on our Facebook page so that you can get more information and learn what you can do to help your community and to help your organization and maybe even the programs that you work with, how to help them grow. Also want to remind you, we're talking about growth here, want to remind you that the Grinding Gang can also help you grow. The Grinding Gang, that's my company. And what we do is that we help small businesses and nonprofits and professionals really make it through, cut through the noise. There are so many articles that we see, so many news reports, so many conversations that we have. And everybody seems like they have a different thing for you to do, or especially when it comes to business. Everybody has an opinion about what you should be doing, how you should be moving in business and things like that, especially when they're not putting any money on it. What we do at the Grinding Gang is really help you figure out, what do you do with all of that information? How do you make it through the noise? So make sure that you hit us up, and we have a lot of free resources for you. So you might want to get on, especially if you want to take your business situation to the whole next level. Talking about next level with business professionals and the like, one of the more effective ways that research suggests for Black people and other disinvested communities to raise out poverty and some of the institutional issues that we face is through education. And every year, thousands and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of African Americans look toward community college and higher ed as an opportunity or way of making it out of some of the challenges that they find themselves in. Well, while that's good on its face, it's not as helpful unless you can put that process to good use. Some people just go to college like me. I knew that I was going to college because they told me I was going to go to college. The major I chose was because when I first got there was because I wanted to be Dr. Honolulu. I wanted my first title to be doctor. I wanted it to be, that's how people would have to greet me. Now, granted, not that's a fairly vain way of really reason of doing it, but nobody else had talked to me about the reasons why to go to school. Everybody just said that once you went to school, you got a degree, you would get a job, and it would just work like that. So I just did what they told me to. And it did not work out the way that I thought that it would. There's literally, you'd ask me in my undergraduate experience, would I be sitting hosting a internet-based radio show? I don't know if I would have said yeah to that. I would have been, Congress this or elected that or judge the other. But my life took a very different turn, and some of it was because of the things that I learned while I was an undergrad. And so what I want to do, or what a lot of the people some of the people that I work with want to do, especially the ones I'm bringing to you today, A returning guest, Dr. Michelle Talbert-Horsey. Dr. Horsey specializes in working with individuals to help them figure out what to do with their career. She has over 20 years of experience working in higher education with students, with professionals, with faculty. She's taught, she's done it all. So I'm very happy to have her back to the show. Welcome back, Dr. Talbert-Horsey. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me back.
Oh, I mean, we had a great time the last time. And one of the things that I realized is that, we're covering really good ground. Like, this is a really big deal for a lot of people. Like, how do we make sure that our kids, when we're sending our kids to school, how do we know that there'll be a good enough return on investment to make it worth it? Because right now there's a lot of student loan debt, and for some of us, there's not a lot of job opportunities especially job opportunities that'll help us pay back our student loan debt. Okay, before we jump into all of that, I remember my show notes, so I'm gonna continue to do an appropriate host job. And so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself to the audience, because there may be some of our audience members who don't remember you from your last visit. So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Michelle Talbert-Horsey. I have 23 years of experience in higher education, working as an academic advisor, an academic crisis intervention counselor with an academic trio program, and in career services.
Mhm. Okay, so yeah, that's what. See, I do this to make sure that people understand. I bring qualified people to the table. I didn't just meet you on a bus stop and you like, hey, I know stuff about resumes. Well, my guy, she qualified, okay? So make sure y'all know that. So now let's look at it like this. So there's a lot of people who are winding down their senior year in high school. A lot of families are excited about graduation and have these great images of the fall and what's going to happen, and sometimes even thinking it all the way through to college graduation. But a lot of times, once you get to that college drop graduation, there's a drop off. People are like, okay, like me, I did what I was supposed to. Now, where's my job?
Mhm.
And there's no job waiting. There's no political science job waiting at the end of the rainbow. There, all of these things that people told me were just going to happen didn't just happen. So as our students are wrapping up their last month or so in high school, month or two in high school right now, how should they be planning not just to go into college for the fall, but also how college will play into their long-term career success?
Well, there's a couple different things I want to touch on. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned return on investment and how people can make that return on investment. When you are visiting colleges, one of the departments that is sometimes not visited is the career services department. And if they are there, they're talking about general services that they offer. That
Mm-hmm.
is the time to ask very specific, pointed questions about where students are finding employment. Now, they may not be able to tell you our sociology majors go here or go there, but they certainly may be able to tell you the percentage of their students that have found employment in their majors.
Okay. So
That is
so give oh sorry give them an example. So because you also did mention where you currently work, and see, I'm impressed with it, but I don't know if you want to share that with people. But if you can give them an example of how you would respond to a question like that as they're going through, because sometimes it's not just about our students understanding the question, because they do a good job about understanding questions. I mean, about asking the question, but sometimes it's understanding the answer. I have that happen a lot of times in contracts where I have a client who read the contract but didn't understand it fully, but they just knew they should read it all before they sign it. And once they did that, they didn't know how to take it to the next level. So not only do we want to let them know what questions to ask, but also what are some types of reasonable responses that they should expect.
okay. Well, currently work for a 2-year institution. So many of our students are planning to go on to a 4-year
Mm-hmm.
institution. So their end goal. Well, let me back way up.
Okay.
One of the things that you have to keep in mind is something we say in counseling: begin with the end in mind. So you really have to think about, even though it might be scary, and as much as you possibly can, you have to project out, where do you see yourself in 4 years, in 3 years, so forth and so on. Then you have to make the decision as to whether or not you want to attend a 2 year institution or a 4 year institution.
Okay.
Want to attend a public or a private, a large school or a small school, all of those bits and pieces. But in all of those steps, there's orientation,
Mm-hmm.
which I mentioned in my last talk that you must attend. And there
Mm-hmm.
are
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes campus tours. And it's in those tours that you may have a chance to meet with the Career Services Department.
Mm-hmm.
From my institution, what we have started to do, and this wasn't always the case, we
Mm-hmm.
have started to collect graduate data. So these are data from students who are just graduating, not data that they collect 6 months out, which a lot of schools also collect from alumni,
Mm-hmm.
which is usually housed in their institutional research. Our data is a little bit more up to date,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if you want to put it in that framework. So we can say X amount or X percentage of our students have found employment, X percentage of our students, our graduating students, are transferring to a 4 year institution.
Mm-hmm.
For the data that we collect, we can also tell you what the top 5 transfer institutions are. We can
Mm-hmm.
also tell you what the top 5 majors were from the data that we collected from the graduating students. And we
Mm-hmm.
can also give you some employers, our top 5, I think it's 5 to 10 top employers
Mm-hmm.
that have hired our students. That's the kind of information you want to get. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
will also say that for some institutions, you can actually talk to the department. So if you want to study psychology and you want to have a conversation with the advisor for the psychology department, that is also a question to ask them. Where have your psychology students gone on? Have they gone
Mm-hmm.
on to graduate school? Have they found employment? And it's very important to ask if they have found employment in their field of study,
Okay.
because they can say, yes, you found employment, but that means that they're working at Macy's. Now, there's not a problem working at Macy's, but if you
Mm-hmm.
put $40,000 or $60,000 towards a psychology degree and
Right.
you have to pay that money back,
Mm-hmm.
working at Macy's may not be the route that you want to take. So you
Mm-hmm.
really have to make sure that you're asking, are they finding employment in their field of study, which means, are they finding a job in the field of psychology?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want to know. If they can't answer that question, then that should cause you should pull back a little bit and dig a little bit deeper to see if you can get some answers from the career services department. And if you still can't get those answers and they're still giving you very general information, my
Mm-hmm.
recommendation is to maybe move that school to the bottom of the list, because you may not
Mm-hmm.
get your return on investment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense. Um, you talked about developing this plan, and as you meet with career services and things like that, and the orientation, and that's cool for when I first get there. I first show up, I go to the orientation, I find out about the office. But one of the things that a lot of people told me when I was an undergrad, it's like, because I was going to continue on to another academic institution, in my case, grad school. But I imagine the same thing to happen when people are transitioning from a 2 year institution to a 4 year institution. Some of the feedback that they get is, hey, you don't need to go to career services until you're ready to look for a job. And I know since you started your career in career services, you've been able to really educate me as to why that's not the case. Why, it's not just the place you go just before you start looking, but it's a way and a reason. There's a ways and reason to start relationships with career services early. Talk about how a student should try to access when should a student try to access career services? How often? Every year? Every other year? Just before you like so yeah, give them some idea of what they should be doing when it comes to career services.
Well, the first thing I would say is that for many students, especially now, this wasn't the case when you and I were in school. I won't date
Mm,
myself,
mm-hmm,
but many schools now require freshman seminar or freshman orientation. It's no longer an elective that you can choose to take or not to take. You must
mm-hmm,
take it. Some schools have a sophomore year type of course as well. But in that freshman year course, where they're teaching you about the different services and about, I'm teaching you essentially about the culture of college.
mm-hmm,
Oftentimes, career services is included in that boat of student support services.
mm-hmm,
They may come to do a classroom presentation. There may even be an assignment of some sort that deals with using career services
mm-hmm,
resources.
mm-hmm.
I recommend that people start as early as possible. Even if you already know or you think you already know what you want to do, because what having a meeting can do for you is solidify that that really is the route that you want to take. And I
Right.
can tell you from experience, for some people that I have met with, the meeting was turned into it just solidified what they wanted to do. They wanted to teach. We did assessments, we had conversations, we looked at resources, and they stayed on that path. I've had
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
others that said, I want to be an elementary school teacher. Really? We do research, we do informational interviews, and that is something that you won't hear a lot of outside of career services is having an informational interview. And that is
okay.
something that I would encourage high school students to do.
What's the
It,
difference between an informational interview and a regular, like, I just want a job interview?
because an informational interview isn't a job interview. You're asking someone about what they do.
Ah, okay,
You're
okay.
asking
Like
them
this.
like this, or someone can have an informational interview with you to
Mm-hmm.
talk about how to become a lawyer. What does that look like? The good, the bad, the ugly. And that helps you to kind of put in, and I encourage people to talk to more than just one person. Okay, you have an interest in
Mm,
corporate law. Talk to the tax attorney. Talk to the attorney who works for the EPA. Talk to the divorce attorney. Talk to different types of attorneys
mm-hmm.
because you might be turned on to something that you weren't aware of before.
You didn't know existed.
Also, it starts you with building your network early, building a
Mm-hmm.
network of professionals. And these
Mm-hmm.
are people that can help you to find internships later on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These are also people that may be able to help you find identify scholarships. These are people that can also help you with that school selection. If you're trying to decide between institutions, they can give you um, an objective point of view
Mm-hmm.
based upon their knowledge and their skill set and what they know of you to date. It can help you in that way.
Absolutely. One of the other reasons that networking with professors, we talked about this the last time. I want to make sure we keep the show separate so that people know we're talking about the same thing on topic, but it's so related. The last time we talked about it was about networking, about why to establish relationships with professors and stuff like that. One of the things that a lot of youth need to college students and youth need to remember is that us old people at this stage, we trying to get into heaven. And so we a lot nicer than we were back in the day. So we want to help because the other part too is that as we get older, we start realizing that, dag, I wish somebody had either help, either I wish somebody had helped me, or we start recognizing and appreciate the people that have helped us and we want to pay it forward. So I'm always excited to talk to somebody who's really out there on the grind, who's really trying to help alumni from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, University of Baltimore, and also some of the schools that I'm affiliated with, Morgan State University and Coppin University, but Coppin State University. But that's the thing. It's like I'm willing to establish a relationship, but if I don't know that you exist, how can I help you? And so I think that one of the places, and maybe you could talk about this, especially how it works at HACC, how students are hooked up with alumni or with other stakeholders to start developing some of these relationships?
But we've hooked our alumni up to our mentorship program. We have a
Okay.
mentorship program that actually runs through career services
Hmm.
because we also have employers that hire students that are also alum that have expressed
Mm.
an interest in being a mentor.
Hmm.
However, the struggle that we have is getting students interested to having them realize, and this is something that admittedly we don't push a lot in career services, the importance of having a mentor. And I want to stress to people, especially our young folks, you can have a mentor for different parts of your life, and you can have more than just one. You can have,
Hmm.
and that person may only be in your life for a season. Maybe this person only is in your life for the 4 years you're in undergrad, or for
Right.
the 2 year, if you're going to a 2 year institution, for the 2 years you're in your 2 year institution. And that maybe you move on to someone else because your interests have changed. Or
Right.
maybe they say, I've taken you as far as I can take you. Here's something, here's the next step. And it's all good. It's all really
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
all about progressing. You asked me a question earlier that I want to make sure that I address two things.
Okay.
The other reason why you should definitely make a relationship um, with your faculty members once you're in college, one big huge reason, other
Hmm.
than getting some basic information, some basic and some in-depth information from them on a number of different topics, and making that connection so that you have someone that you can go back to for recommendations.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sometimes internship opportunities go through their office because faculty members are connected with professional organizations. Another big thing is scholarships.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, faculty members have access, they will get notices of various different scholarships, and why it's important that they know who you are. If I know who you are and I know what you're interested in, I can save that $10,000 scholarship application for you. If I don't know anyone who's interested, it's going in the trash. I don't need the
Yep.
scholarship. So it's
It-
going in the
yep.
garbage. And that's $10,000 down the drain. That, if I can say anything to the younger folks who will be watching this or listening to this telecast, that's how, if you ever wonder how people end up with all of these different scholarships, and you're sitting there thinking like, I'm not good enough. You are, first of all, you are good enough. Second of all, it's about making the connections. It's about getting out and talking to people and letting them know what you're interested in. And it's okay if you're interested in apples today and oranges
Hmm.
tomorrow. That's okay. Faculty members know, staff members know, we know that this is prime growing time.
Right.
And you will be exposed to so much while you're in college, whether you're attending a 2 year institution or a
Hmm.
4 year institution. You're going to be exposed to so much that's going to influence your growth. I'll give you a perfect example. When I was an academic advisor, I would always have students come to me, usually my pre meds, and
Hmm.
say, I'm going to be a bio major. I love biology in high school, hated chemistry, but they knew for pre med they had to take chem.
Right.
So they would begrudgingly sign up for chemistry, but that's like, Miss Michelle, I'm an ACES biology class. Well,
Yeah.
and I would get the same thing with my chem majors. My chem majors would come in. I'm an ace chemistry. I hated bio in high school. Oh, it was awful. Okay. 9 times out of 10, my bio major that came in and said, I'm going to be a bio major, would come back and say, I'm going to be a chemistry major. I love chemistry. I love college chemistry. I hate college bio. And my chemistry majors would say the same thing. Put me in the bio classes. I hated college chemistry. They would just flip
Hmm.
9 times out of 10. And that's the growth that happens. And I didn't, I was on board, like, okay, let's flip these two things for you and get you into
Hmm.
the appropriate classes. Make sure hook them up with tutoring if they needed that, you know, and let's make it happen.
I think one of the things that you mentioned in one of our last telecasts was this idea that your mentorship and your social interactions and your professional interactions on campus not only help manage and help you with your social adjustment and these types of networking pieces, but you also kind of pick up on access to resources about how to study. I mean, you mentioned that a lot of people, they have these expectations of how well they're going to do based on their high school experience. And when they show up to college and they don't perform as well as they did in high school in some cases, it's a really big shock to them because I thought I was going to kill it in biology. I thought I was going to kill it in biology. And I get there and it's harder than I thought. But then I find chemistry, or like for me, political science, because I was a biochemical molecular bio major when I started just because I wanted to go to med school and become Dr. Honolulu. But then when I realized that I could get a doctorate another way, I decided to find something I actually cared about, and that was political science. Um, so, how do you advise, or have you advised students who may have been high performers or had a history of academic progress or a level of academic skill that was not compatible with what they experienced at the college level?
I've worked with a lot of high performing students, students that would go on to take college and take classes in the honors college. One of the challenges that they face is no longer being the smartest person in the room. And how I work with that is I've reminded them it's not that you're not smart, and there's something to be learned from everyone. That's the mindset that you have to have. No,
Mm-hmm.
and you may not be the smartest person in the class, but I would say that to any of those folks in the class.
Mm-hmm.
Individually, you're not the smartest person.
Mm-hmm.
Collectively, however, you are the smartest,
Mm-hmm.
because
But if
each of
no,
you have a each of you have a piece of that. But
right.
it's about learning, and
Mm-hmm.
it's about learning from each other, and learning from these other high performing, fast thinking, fast processing people. That's
Mm-hmm.
where you're going to get your learning. And that's what I kind of had to teach them, that it's okay that you're in the classroom with other high performing people, because they're
Mm-hmm.
going to push you to be perform even higher than what you currently are.
So, but when you have that conversation with them, this is either probably at a point where they've already recognized they're dealing with it and they've come to you for some to either share or for some support. I'm talking about that moment when you realized it. When you get to college, like for me, I was one of the smartest people in the room in high school, and everybody was surprised I wasn't valedictorian, blah, blah, blah. And then I get to college, and when I tell you, I did not, I was so ashamed about my academic preparation when I got to college. Like I was getting,
Mhm.
the work in high school that was like A plus, read this report to the whole class, and we'll have an award ceremony for, sometimes like that. It was, I mean, this is a great effort C. And that was a really, really difficult thing for me to do, to try to get my mind wrapped around. And for a while, I was like, maybe I just shouldn't be here, because clearly I was wrong about what I was capable of. And this first, what was it, like 5 weeks was just destroying me, and out 5-10 weeks, and I was like, maybe I should just go. How do you help people work through that kind of emotion?
We talk about what's the support that they need. The first
Mm-hmm.
question I ask is, what do you need? I hear what you're telling me, and I can empathize with how you feel. Tell me what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And they are very good about, I haven't had an experience where a student couldn't tell me what was going on.
Okay.
And here's the reason for that. It's because I built trust with my students. As I finished telling you how I would communicate with my high achieving students about
Mm-hmm.
being afraid to take an honors class because they weren't going to be the smartest one in the group.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of transparency I have with my students, because not a lot of people would have said that to a student that had gotten straight A's and was 4.0 and was a valedictorian and all of these different kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things. But they needed to be told the truth. When you walk into this classroom, you're walking into a classroom where there are a lot of valedictorians and salutatorians or and whatever torians.
Yep.
You're walking into a classroom like that. But when I have a student coming to me in those first couple of weeks, and they're like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm studying. This doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to everything clicking. Or I would have situations where students would come to me and say, this is the first time I have to actually study, and I don't know how to study.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a big one.
What do I do? And so what I would do at that point is hook them up with, we had services on campus that were specifically designed to help students study, to help them to address those issues. And of course, we also had tutoring and that kind of thing. So I would make sure they were connected with the tutoring services, but
Mm-hmm.
I also made sure that they were connected with that one particular service that was, how do I study? And
Mm-hmm.
I would prep them because they were a little nervous about sending the email.
Yep.
So sometimes at my desk, we would send the email together, or I would give them the person's name and I would say, okay, this is exactly what you need to say to this person. If they didn't have the words or didn't really know, I'm like, this is what you need to say,
Mm-hmm.
because this is what you've said to me, and this is where you're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Moreover, I followed up with my students to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that they got the services that they needed, to see if they were okay,
Mm-hmm.
especially within those first couple of weeks, because that's the add drop period.
Right.
And
Right.
for,
Right.
for those of you who don't know, add drop is a period um, in your schedule before things get really serious. You can add a class or drop a class.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of our students, that's the time when they decide if college is for them or not for them.
Mm-hmm.
And for some students, college is not for them at this particular time in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that it's not for them for the rest of their lives. It just
Mm-hmm.
means that maybe for right now, they're not ready to make those connections, or they're not ready to reach out for that support.
That is a very real thing. So how do they get ready?
How do you get ready? Well, for starting college, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
you have to get your focus right. You have
Mm-hmm.
to know why you're there. You're not, I mean, it's great. And yes, college is not all about the academics, because you have
Mm-hmm.
to grow socially. There are
Mm-hmm.
social pieces that you learn while you're in college that you won't learn. You will learn elsewhere, but it's going to
Mm-hmm.
take you a little bit longer to learn those pieces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you learn them in college in a relatively safe environment.
Right.
You're kind of insulated because you're a student, so you can kind of get away with certain things because you're a student. You know, I would say focus on what it is why you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Lean into the freshman studies classes.
Mm-hmm.
Make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you're talking to your professors. Make sure that you have a relationship with your academic advisor. Even if it's a faculty advisor, that's fine, or a generalist advisor. Be open and be transparent. If you are nervous, say, I'm a little nervous about this class. Don't
Mm-hmm.
let people put you in classes and you don't know why you're taking the class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't
That
don't
will happen too. So
Yeah,
there are some advisors who take a very paternalistic approach, and they're going to tell you how you should live.
they're going to tell you. I mean, it's fine for them to say, here are the classes you need for your major. But
Mm-hmm.
usually there are several choices that choices that you can make to satisfy a particular requirement. Pick the one that you feel comfortable with. You know, if you're nervous about math because
Mm-hmm.
you're just not a math person,
Mm-hmm.
that's perfectly okay. A lot of people are not math people. You know
Right.
what you do to that? You say, okay, do you have tutoring on campus? When does that start? Where is it? Just in case I need it. And
Boom.
you know what else you do?
Well.
When you go to that first math class, you find out on the syllabus when your professor has his or her or they's office
Mm-hmm.
hours,
Mm-hmm.
and you show up. You be a presence in that person's face. I don't care if that person has 100 students in that class. You
Mm-hmm.
show up, don't show out, but show up. You show up to every single office hour so that
Mm-hmm.
that person will know your face.
That makes sense. And when they know your face and you don't show out, because that's the other thing that I want to talk about a little bit. Uh, when you show your face and you do show out, there are some of us who, as we're navigating the space and the transition, that we will engage in some poor decision making. We will take too many classes, or we'll say like, "Oh, I can handle." I mean, because the funny part is that I've made enough mistakes that I can continue to use myself as an example. When I was before I started college, I used the high school mindset. I was like, "Well, look, I'm used to being in my class. I mean, school started for us at 7:45 in the morning. So if I have an 8:30 class, I just take classes back to back like I was in high school, and then I'm out, finish class by 11:30, 12 o'clock. Yay! Oh my God, that was a horrible decision because the pace of college classes, the amount of work, and even moving beyond around classes, that was a big deal. So there are decisions that you can make along the way, missing an add drop date, those types of things that will have an impact. So how do we navigate these spaces where yes college can be a safe space as you're trying to figure out your major and figure out your placement and get to know these people, but also you show up at a professor's office and are upset and blow that upset onto the professor. That may not go well for you for the rest of your college and beyond college career. So I don't want to freak anybody out seriously, but also be very careful because these are people. These aren't just roles and degrees. These are people with feelings. And so make sure you engage them from their position of authority and responsibility with you, but also recognize that, they're people. Yeah, sorry.
No, I was going to say to that, when you start college, you are 17, 18 years old.
Traditionally.
And traditionally, you're 17 or 18 years old.
Hmm.
And you're still a teenager in many
Hmm.
cases. Well, if you're 17, 18, you are a teenager.
Hmm.
And you've just left high school. So you've just left a situation where you're not being treated as an adult. But when you come to college, you suddenly are being treated as an adult. And the
Hmm.
expectation is that you're going to behave and act in such a way. Well, part of being an adult is learning how to advocate for yourself.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things, as you asked me earlier, in terms of preparing for that next step. Begin advocating for yourself as
Hmm.
much as possible. Be accountable. If you say you're going to do something, do it. When you go to college, they're going to tell you as much as they can tell you. There are going to be some things like add drop. That's
Hmm.
what you're going to have to keep on a calendar, because no one's going to keep telling you add drop is coming, add drop is coming. That may even be a question you have to ask your advisor when you're initially being registered for classes. When is add drop, in case I have a problem with these classes? And if
Right.
you do need to add or drop and you're afraid to add or drop, and you think you're going to do the wrong thing, talk to your academic advisor. But there's another service on campus that needs to be mentioned
Okay.
and plays a really big role in a lot of this as well. And that is counseling. Know where the counseling office is. Mental health is very serious. The stress that a person undergoes when they are transitioning from high school to college is real. And for some people, it is overwhelming to the extent that it's like they become paralyzed. They can't do anything. Or they become homesick such a degree that they don't want to leave their dorm.
Mm-hmm.
That's not healthy. You need to see a counselor, and it is okay. You don't have to see the counselor every single semester for all the time that you're in school. You don't have to see
Or
the
you
counselor
could.
every week, or you could, depending upon how they had their sessions set up. They very well, you very well could, but know that that service is available and that it's on campus and it's confidential. No one knows that you're going unless you tell them that you're going.
Or let's be honest, or they see you walk into the building.
Or, well, sometimes the building is shared with other services. I worked
Right.
at a place where the building was a student union. So it was student activities, career services, disability services, counseling, and I think
Okay.
um, intercultural affairs or something like that. So you could be going to any number of different floors. But
Okay.
what you talk about is your business.
Absolutely. And that's what they need to understand. Like your conversations with your therapist and your mental health professional, that is sacrosanct. That is something you should be able to rely on. The other part too, and I love the fact that you are covering this, but your emotional well-being will have a direct impact on your academic outcome. If your heart isn't right, if your mind isn't right, if you're always worried, you will perform less well than you normally would. A lot
Yeah.
of times, many of us have been trained through bullying to be pushed to success. I've seen a lot of coaches, and whether they're on the sports side or the kind of these academic decathlons, they start, "What are you doing? Come on, push it, push it, push it." And what they don't realize is that becomes the student's inner voice many times. And so the student isn't even able to find kindness and peace within themselves because they're always pushing. And so finding the mental health resources and supports on campuses, you are right, is tremendously important. Tremendously. I absolutely agree with
Well,
you.
that goes back to, and that's something else I would offer my students as well, especially if they're coming to me, any student, but especially my high achieving students
Hmm.
that were feeling like I'm not good enough. I'm never going to make it because I can't take 5 honors classes,
Right,
or
right.
I'm never going to be the smartest one in the room. So I must be um, irreparably flawed in some way. And that for me was a trigger to say, okay, um, have you thought about talking to someone about this? Because some of these issues go a little bit deeper than me giving you a pep. I didn't say give me a pep
Right.
talk, but in my mind, I'm
Right.
thinking this goes a little bit deeper. And if it goes deeper, talk to someone about that feeling, because sometimes you have to be deprogrammed. As Mr. Honolulu said, you have to be deprogrammed because you were bullied into certain positions and
Hmm.
bullied into believing. Some people think that it's giving you confidence, but really what it's doing is scaring the daylights out of you.
Absolutely. Like I remember, uh, growing up, there was a lot. My cousin used to do this thing where she would like, try to scare you because in her mind, if I scare you enough, then you won't be scared of anything anymore. And I'm like, I get it if you think there's a finite amount of fear that somebody has. It's like, oh, once you get used to it, you won't be afraid. But if you don't understand how that person is built or how that person's mind is set up, what you're doing is effectively torturing them because you are brain in an effort to try to get them beyond their greatest fear. All you're doing is making them scareder of it because they can't even control staying away from it. And that's a that's one of the reasons that I really do believe that it is important that people with not just with professional health training and credentials, that they become involved in these things, because even I don't know enough to necessarily be helpful to somebody with some significant issues. I may not even recognize how to identify that the issue is significant. I know there are many people who say things like, "Oh, you're sad all the time. You can feel problems getting out of bed." You know what, girl? Just pray about it. We're gonna pray together, and I'm gonna come over. Or you know what? Let's have a girls' trip out to da 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 da. Just trying these platitudes to help people feel better, when there's more substantial work that needs to be done.
Mhm. I
So,
would I would also offer, on some campuses, some schools have chaplains. So the
mm-hmm,
chaplains can also be a source of support as well. So there, the support is out there, and
mm-hmm,
I don't know how much counseling services is promoted in orientations. I think schools are starting to do a little bit more of it now than what
mm-hmm,
they had in the past. But these are questions to ask when you are. This is part of your return on investment. These services are services you're paying for. So
mm-hmm.
ask about them. Whether or not you use them or not is a different story. But I do want to go back to a question that you asked me earlier about how frequently people should use career services.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm,
You should start in your freshman year, first semester,
mm-hmm,
depending upon what, and you can see your career counselor. If you want to see that person every day for a week, if you want to see that person, you probably won't be able to get an appointment every day for a week. But if you want to see that person once a week for a month, or
mm-hmm,
whatever the situation is, that's perfectly fine. We're there to help you and help you to get clarification.
mm-hmm,
I oftentimes look at career services as, when students come in, they have a backpack, and that backpack is full of patio pavers. And patio pavers, as you know, are really heavy stones,
oh, mm-hmm, gotcha.
and students are carrying that on their backs. And so
Mm-hmm,
our job is to help the student to unzipping that backpack, take out those pavers, and put down a path.
mm.
That's
You know
what we
what?
do.
I give you big ups on that metaphor, because I was struggling for a little while. I was like, wait a minute, I don't understand where she's going with patio stuff, because I'm not fancy. But I like the way you brought it back. It's like you lay out the path forward. I was like, okay, I see you with that one. That was pretty fun.
Yes, you definitely.
As a 50-some-year-old or 50-ish year old man, I am really big on dad jokes and puns. So that, my dear, was very, very punny.
Oh my goodness. But you definitely don't want to wait until you're about to graduate, because
Mhm,
that causes more stress for a lot of people, especially if you don't know what it is that you want to do. You have
mhm.
gone, and I've worked with students that have gone through 4 years of education, studying something that in many cases, at some point in the middle, they decided they didn't really want to do, but they continued on with it
Yep.
anyway because they already completed so many classes.
I
And
did so many. Oh my god.
yeah, and then they come, and here's the kicker: students will come to the office the week before graduation and say,
Mm.
I need a job," or what am I going to do with this major? So it's almost like you have to take them back to ground zero
Right.
to bring
And
them up.
and a lot of that is because we start off with a lot of these imaginary truths that we not even truth these stories we tell them. Like for me, I waited. Well, I decided to go to grad school, and I thought it was going to be before then I got a job because I thought it was going to be easy. I have a college degree. I'm a black man in America, with a college degree. I had leadership experience and blah 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 blah. It didn't even occur to me that my experience could have been better had I gone to see career services or really work with some of those offices. And I did some of the stuff that they told me to, the go talk to somebody, check it off, and those types of things. But I really did not understand the importance of how that could have better prepared me and even helped me work through some of my questions a lot sooner. And so I'm really, that's why I'm really glad that you have agreed to come back on the show from time to time to really help some of these students not have some of the to make the not necessarily the outcomes, but to find a better process than some of the ones I took.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of different things. Like I said, I'm a big fan of informational interviewing and mentorship. You know, as a high school student, you can find a mentor now. You can do informational interviews now.
Mm-hmm.
If you already have an idea about what it is you want to do, you can volunteer. If you can't find part-time employment or summer employment in that field,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
volunteer somewhere. You can still put that on your resume.
Yes.
Volunteer, and that'll help you to figure out, do I really like this? Or I kind of like this, but I only like one part of that. And that's great, because now is the time for you to kind of try on different things. And volunteering
Mm-hmm.
is such a great way, not only to give back, but it's such a great way to figure out what you like and what you don't like without having a tremendous time commitment
Mm-hmm.
to the process. Now, no, you're not paid for it, but you're only dedicating 3 hours a week,
Right.
in some cases. So that's a really great way of starting to prepare yourself for, and it's also good for preparing for college as well, because you're going to be meeting different people, working with different personalities, and that's what you're going to run into in college. You got to navigate working with all these different personalities, different
Mm-hmm.
learning styles. So it's really going to be a interesting cultural mix.
Right. Right. And you talk about the volunteer opportunity and getting to understand the cultural mix of those things. One of the ways to volunteer and also to get some mentorship to expand your network is to volunteer with student organizations and the different types of organizations on campus. But I know that there, for some people, they're really good, but for some people, they get so caught up in the student life side of things that sometimes they forget the career and the academic. It sometimes it seems like it's a balance of all of these things put together. And so, how would you advise students who are looking at student led organizations or student leadership opportunities? How would you advise them, as we get ready to wrap this up? How would you advise them in their college experience as they're thinking about what to do next? How does joining student organizations and volunteerism play into their career success?
I would just say, just be very mindful and be realistic with your time, because you can't do everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
about having, and people talk about having different balls in the air,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but you don't have to throw all the balls in the air at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to have everything going at the same time and during the same semester or even the same year. Pace yourself. You don't have to volunteer for 5 or 6 different student activities. I will tell you something that you can do, especially once you have kind of solidified your career path, is
Mm-hmm.
joining professional organizations as a student. It's usually cheaper, like $10, $15 to join as a student. You can volunteer with one of their organizations or one of their committees as a student leader on one of their committees. And that'll get you a little bit closer to your career goal than maybe even doing something on campus.
Mm-hmm.
If you choose, and I would also say, you don't have to be a member of 10 different student organizations. Don't be a member of 10 different student organizations the same semester, because you're probably not going to have that kind of time. You may
Mm-hmm.
have to go back to, and I know I'm dating myself, go back to having a hard copy planner where you put down home, or however you collect your stuff, so you can visually see it,
Mm-hmm.
plan out what you want your semester to look like. When I was in graduate school, I had a calendar, like a regular wall calendar, and I
Mm-hmm.
would put on the calendar what chapters I had to read, when my
Mm-hmm.
tests were, when my papers were, and I would actually mark on there when I had to do my drafts. And that was just for me. I didn't have to turn in my drafts, But when I had to do my drafts,
Mm-hmm.
how many days I was going to study, if I was going to study every other day for an exam,
Mm-hmm.
I put that on there because I needed to see it, because I knew if I kept all that stuff in my mind, it was going to drive me crazy. And something, one of those ball holes was going to fall on my head. So I was working at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to literally write everything down. So I would say get a chart, get something visual, make
Mm-hmm.
it old school, write down your classes, write down how much time you're going to need to study realistically for your classes. Like, the classes that are going to be hard for you, once you read that syllabus, if the syllabus is 50 pages, you're going to have to
Mm-hmm.
put some work into that class. Heck, sometimes if the syllabus is one page and there's only one paper, and that's
Mm-hmm.
and that's your grade, you're going to have to put some effort into those classes. So you really have to be realistic about what your time looks like. Also, if you are a work study student, if you're
Mm-hmm.
working on campus somewhere, well, I know that you worked on campus. I
I
worked
did.
I worked 2 jobs on campus. You have to put those hours in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
in that free time that you have, that's when you can look volunteer work for your job, like for your
Mm-hmm.
career. You can add that into your work schedule like you would a work study job. But
Right.
the other things, I'm not telling you not to have activities that are fun things, but
Mm-hmm.
but you look at your fun time last. That's your free time. How much free time do you have? If you have 5 hours of free time, then yeah, maybe you have time to join a couple of organizations. Now, does that mean that you have to be the president of the organization? Not necessarily. Does it mean that maybe you can be the secretary, maybe you can be the treasurer? You
Mm-hmm.
have to know how much time is going to go into those different things. And is that going to get you to your much larger goal?
Makes perfect sense. I think I appreciate the way that you always do this. You bring us to the end with some real mind dropping, not mind dropping, but thoughtful, thought provoking topic. And you have done that yet again. I am so grateful as always for you coming through and blessing us. Like, it is so funny. Like, the time always just goes, and I'm like, gosh, where did the time go? And I'm like, oh, there's the clock has gone by really quickly. I do this at the end of every show. Can I get a commitment that you're going to come back and help our students and families progress more toward their collegiate ROI?
Would love to.
Oh, thank you very well, Doc. Say bye to the. Oh, actually, tell the people how they can get in contact with you if they want to get some more information or support from the Doc.
Feel free to share my email.
Okay. Oh, I like the kitty. Oh, see, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead because I listen to Cat. The cat told me it's time for you to go, so I got to let you go. All right, Doc. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye. Oh, did you see what happened? We got a special visitor at the end of the show and everything. Look, but did you see? I said, like, this is like a Marvel Universe cameo. You just saw the back of the tail. You ain't even see the cat's whole face. You don't know what cat that is. It could be a whole new spoiler. That could be a superhero. That could be our business cat. I know what you all thought. You all thought I was going to make a joke about pussy, didn't you? I didn't. I'm going to later, though, when you all aren't around. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we have done it again. We have had an amazing show. We have learned a lot, and I'm hopeful that it will change the trajectory for some of you all out there. Until tomorrow, we'll be black then.